Good morning. And we want to thank you all today for taking the time to join us on this webinar on the benefits of pre-planning funeral arrangements. We just have a couple of housekeeping items for our attendees. On your screen, if you touch your screen somewhere, there will be a Q&A widget or a chat widget. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please feel free to type those questions into that area, and we will be happy to answer them at the end of Jamie's presentation. At this point, I am going to turn our meeting over to our presenter, Jamie Allar, as she discusses with us the simple steps of funeral planning.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. My name is Jamie Allar, and I'm with Crawford Funeral Home with locations in Montello and Oxford. I've been in funeral service for about 14 years now, and I've helped lots and lots of families over the years to get everything in order. We're pleased to be able to assist you with this technology, and while I missed the opportunity to greet everyone in person, I'm thankful that we can be here together today. So we're here to talk about something that will affect every single person, yet it's something most people have some difficulty discussing. It's so important to address this and prepare for it ahead of time, not only for you, but especially for those that you love. The fact that you're here today and you've taken this brave first step to learn is a wonderful thing, so kudos to you. So when we consider the significant events in our lives that we prepare and plan for, things like getting married, the birth of children and grandchildren, their education, your retirement, we rarely just let these things happen without thoughtful planning. And like other major life events, funerals require planning too. An estimated 34% of people over the age of 50 have pre-planned a funeral for themselves or someone else. We see these numbers growing each year as consumers become more aware that this can and should be done ahead of time. In fact, most people, over 90% in a recent survey, agreed that pre-planning is a good idea. So the question is why, not why should I pre-plan, but rather why wouldn't I? The key reasons that families share with us for why pre-planning is important are first to lift the burden for their loved ones, both emotionally and financially. The second reason is to ensure that things go the way that you want them to. And finally, for peace of mind, knowing that you've done everything you can for those that you love. People often ask, how much does a funeral cost these days? And while the National Funeral Directors Association tells us the average cost nationally is around $7,000, this average doesn't take into account what we refer to as cash advance items. And cash advances contribute to the overall funeral cost, but these prices aren't set by a funeral home. Some of those items would be cemetery costs, like the cost of the plot, or for opening and closing of the grave, or the headstone, the engraving on the headstone, obituary notices, a funeral meal, flowers, honorariums, and death certificates are a few of these items. A simple cremation may start just under $3,000, while a traditional full-service burial funeral could reach close to $20,000 when you consider these cash advances included. Funeral costs are typically increasing faster than the cost of living, about 4 to 5% each year on average. That means today's prices could be double in about 14 years, and we know how quickly that time can fly. So when considering what type of service will work best for you and your loved ones, we'll discuss some of the basic options. And it's important to know that there's really no rules or one size fits all. When we use the term funeral, it typically refers to a formal service based on religious or cultural traditions. body is present in most cases. And because the body is present, funerals generally take place within a few days following death, before burial or cremation take place. A funeral can take place in a church, at a graveside, at the funeral home, or even at someone's home. And while a memorial service is typically held without a body present, it can be scheduled days, weeks, or even months after death occurs. And this allows time for family and friends to gather. In fact, as some of you may have heard about recently during this pandemic, many families have opted to delay those services as they're currently being limited to just 10 people at a time. A memorial service can be elaborate or simple and can really be held just about anywhere. It can be held at a home, in a park, lakeside, graveside, in a church, or at a funeral home. And if you're looking for some unique ideas, I encourage you to take advantage of the free personal session that will be offered to you after today. One of my favorite ideas for a creative memorial service was a self-proclaimed sweet tooth whose memorial service was an ice cream social, complete with signage that said, "Life is short, eat dessert first." Some additional options to personalize the service include military honors for veterans, a butterfly or dove release, photo displays, or a video tribute. You can raise funds for a favorite charitable organization, host a meal or a reception at a favorite gathering place, or even something as simple as serving a favorite food item. I remember working with a couple recently who pre-planned for their favorite bakery to provide lefse at their funeral gathering, their meal, which was a family tradition of theirs. So just a little brainstorming can result in a great idea to make your event special and personalized. And we are here to help with this. When considering a service or a gathering, it's important to remember that this truly is a gift for the people who will need to grieve their loss and honor your life. I hear people say, "I don't want a funeral," which is usually code for "I don't want people to make a fuss over me." And of course, this is human nature, but remember, it's also a basic human need for the living to honor loved ones who go before us. When we lose someone we love, ceremony is an important component of that healing process. And it's a way to help reconcile the loss. Funerals truly are for the living, and that is something to keep in mind as you plan. We do also have the option for those who wish to plan a very basic direct burial or cremation. Just know that anything planned ahead of time will provide that much needed direction at the time of need, and you can always add to or change your arrangements at any time. If you are choosing burial, you can pre-select a casket. Traditional cemeteries in our area require a grave liner or a burial vault, which can also be pre-selected. And then finally, you'll want to consider your clothing and jewelry for a viewing. If you're choosing cremation and would like your cremated remains to be given to a family member, you might select an urn or other container. Other options include a decorative ceramic piece or having ashes transformed into natural stones. You can even have remains incorporated into a coral reef or gemstone. They have really come up with all kinds of unique and personalized options for cremation. So some of these things are best to explore before those emotions start to come into the picture. So once you have an idea of what type of arrangements would be best to accommodate you and your family's needs, a cost estimate can be provided. And this information will be important when considering your funding options. An important question to ask is, if something happened to you tomorrow, how would your funeral expenses be paid? And for some, personal savings might be their first thought, but for long-term planning, the potential for encountering expensive long-term healthcare costs does pose a risk to savings. In addition, a surviving spouse may need to rely on those savings to supplement their lost income. When we rely on other family members or friends to pay our funeral expense, there's a risk they could overspend emotionally. And many people aren't aware that oftentimes when death occurs, assets that are passed to the kids are frozen during probate, which can mean family is left to cover the bill before your funds are accessible, sometimes for many months. So borrowing from family and friends might be an option, but asking for help can carry a heavy emotional toll. Finally, a credit card or loan could be an option, but there are interest charges to consider, and most people don't want to pass a debt along to their family as a goodbye present. Another thought you might have is that I have life insurance, and life insurance is a wonderful option to pass a tax-free gift to your survivors. It allows loved ones to maintain their standard of living after death, and funeral expenses are generally due at the time of arrangements. Life insurance generally takes weeks to process if all goes well, and this can lead family to have to cover some of those expenses out of pocket until your claim is settled. By the way, in cases where a death certificate might be delayed, this also delays the timing of the funds. In cases of an accidental death or an autopsy investigation, it's common to see weeks or even months of delay to receive those death certificates. Also, for long-term planning, life insurance with cash value is considered an available asset for your long-term care. In other words, just like your other savings, most policies are not protected from creditors like the nursing home. Fortunately, there is an alternative to allow you to avoid some of the pitfalls I just mentioned. You can choose to arrange payment in advance with an irrevocable funeral trust designed just for the payment of funeral expenses. Once you've pre-planned your funeral needs, you purchase a special insurance policy for the amount needed. When the time comes, your funeral provider will ensure that your wishes are carried out, providing the products and services that you've pre-selected with no additional work for your loved ones. Your family will never have to call an insurance company to start a claim or worry about juggling funds. It's all taken care of. It's a smart financial decision for several reasons. First, you can secure prices, and as mentioned earlier, funeral and cremation costs are estimated to double every 14 years. You're giving yourself the freedom to make customized payments on your terms. You can pay in one lump sum or monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual installments over several years. When a funeral is not funded ahead of time, the full amount is due and payable in a few days. So funding your arrangements ahead of time relieves a huge burden for your loved ones, as the costs are immediately paid at the time of death with no interaction needed on behalf of the family. The funeral home files a claim and receives the payment directly, and if there are unused funds, they are returned to your estate. So no one knows what lies ahead, and if medical issues require long-term care, your funeral policy, which is held in an irrevocable burial trust, will remain protected no matter what. And finally, what peace of mind to not have to worry about how your family will cope with all the decisions that have to be made quickly at the time of death. You're getting everything in order for them. So planning ahead is a gift for those that you'll leave behind. As I'm sure nearly everyone here can attest, when someone we love dies, emotions are raw and tensions exist even in the best of relationships. The potential for disagreements is far less when the key details are mapped out for your family and paid for. They'll be able to focus on their healing process and be confident knowing that they're following your wishes. And you can achieve peace of mind knowing that you've done all you can to make a tough transitional period a little easier for them. We'll guide you through this 3-step process. First, we organize the documents that will be necessary. And just like other important documents like power of attorney or a will, trust, your funeral plan should include some important documents prepared ahead of time. In addition to mapping out your detailed final wishes, we can include an authorization for final disposition, which is a form that ensures that someone is in charge of executing all aspects of your final arrangements. For example, who gets the urn? When will the service take place? Who's allowed to attend the family's final viewing? Who gets the final say on the contents of your obituary? The designation is not legally addressed in your power of attorney or by the estate's executor. So this can be an important peacekeeper document for those families that have potential for disagreement. And let's face it, many families with a rift never anticipated that they would be that family before it happened. We also create an outline for the obituary and death certificates for your file. And lastly, your family will never have to call an insurance company to start a claim or worry about juggling funds. We'll take care of the financial aspect ahead of time. So where do you begin? Well, hopefully you'll be inspired today to take some action, and we'd like to offer you an opportunity to put some of these things you've learned today to work for you and your family. Later today, you'll receive an email with 2 links. This is the first link. When you open it, you will have the opportunity to register for your free gift card, which is our way of saying thank you for your time and attention today. The second link will open my calendar, where you can take advantage of a free one-on-one Zoom meeting. And for those of you who may want to involve other family members in this discussion, I encourage you to extend a meeting invitation to them as well. This technology allows us to bring everyone together from the comfort and safety of their home. A meeting will take about an hour, and there's no cost and no obligation. Customers often tell me it's an easy and even pleasant experience. So I look forward to helping you and anyone else that you would like to share this opportunity with. I'd like to leave you all with a final thought. This is a quote from a customer of mine who said, "I never wanted to plan my funeral, or anyone else's for that matter, but I figure if we all just plan our own, that'll be the only one we ever have to plan. And that sure would be a whole lot easier for everyone." So Andy, do we have any questions that have come in?
One of the questions that came in was, what happens if I move or choose to use a different funeral home?
That's a great question. So with a funeral policy and irrevocable trust, you have the option to move that to another funeral provider. So if a funeral home goes out of business, or if you move out of the area, or just decide to go elsewhere, you always have that option because this is something you control, completely portable. So that's a great question. Were there any other questions that came in?
That was the only one that came up.
Okay. All right. Well, I very much appreciate everyone's time and attention today. I look forward to assisting you with this very important task. We'll try to make it as easy and comfortable for you as possible. And we look forward to our next conversation. So thank you again.
That brings our webinar to an end. Thank you very much for your attendance. Please feel free, if you have any additional questions, to reach out to Jamie at any time at 715-571-4160, as you see on the screen. Thank you very much. Enjoy the remainder of your day.